Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I'm laughing because I called this one Sour Lemon, but immediately as I wrote it, I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, are you right? I had a very specific opinion of this that I'm about to do, that I'm about to show. But then it occurred to me, yeah, but are you right? Are you right? You're jumping to an opinion. And look, as somebody who can jump to an opinion, I can jump to an opinion. And I am pretty damn good at making an argument and arguing for that particular opinion. But is it right? Just because you can argue a particular disposition doesn't necessarily mean that that disposition is true. So I'm going to open this one for conversation. I'm going to open this one for people if they want to call in to talk about it. To call in and talk about it when they get to the portion. I'll put the number at the bottom in a moment. But I'm going to give my spiel. I'm going to give the spiel that my first thought that I'm questioning, and I'm going to explain why I think I'm slightly questioning it, even though I think the first thought is right. Don Lemon typically works for the failure that is CNN, the news network that's really not a news network, that comes across as a kind of propaganda arm of the United States government, that news in the same way that stenographers are stenographers. Don Lemon is not necessarily at CNN when he's having this conversation. At least I don't believe so. But Don Lemon is asked something. And in answering the conversation, Don Lemon says, I believe that Bernie Sanders hurt Hillary Clinton worse than Donald Trump hurt Hillary Clinton. I heard this and I said, nonsense. You work for a failure of a news organization and you're telling me that your objective opinion was that Bernie Sanders hurt Hillary Clinton worse, saying that Bernie Sanders supporters attacked Hillary Clinton and that she was shocked as shit that she was getting attacked in this way. And they continued to attack her all through the campaign and afterwards. Let's talk about this. I'm going to give my spiel. I'm going to show it first. I'm going to give my spiel. We can talk about it after. I'm having slight doubts about my original idea on this, but I still think my original point on this is correct. This is Don Lemon at Vanity Fair or Vanity Magazine. Hold on. Explaining why he believes Bernie Sanders lacerated and injured Miss Hillary Clinton worse. And I have to call her Miss Hillary Clinton because she didn't win the presidency. Good. Worse than Bernie Sanders. Yes, am I a little bitter? I'm a little bitter. Let's keep going.
When you saw the protests, did it seem to be, did you think that this could backfire, this could cost the Democrats the election?
I always thought that Bernie Sanders damaged Hillary Clinton more than Donald Trump did. And that's just as watching objectively. I just thought that. And listen, I'm not choosing sides with Democrat or Republican. I'm not a registered Democrat. I'm not a registered Republican. I'm an observer. But I always thought that Bernie Sanders damaged her more than Donald Trump did because people expected Donald Trump to hit her and hit her hard. They didn't expect Bernie Sanders and his people to do that. And they continued to do it after she became the nominee. That didn't help her. And then she did a lot of things that didn't help herself, but that's another thing.
When you saw the protests, did it seem to be, did you think that this could backfire, this could cost the Democrats the election?
I always thought that Bernie Sanders damaged Hillary Clinton more than Donald Trump did. And that's just as watching objectively. I just thought that. And listen, I'm not choosing sides with Democrat or Republican. I'm not a registered Democrat. I'm not a registered Republican. I'm an observer. But I always thought that Bernie Sanders damaged her more than Donald Trump did because people expected Donald Trump to hit her and hit her hard. They didn't expect Bernie Sanders and his people to do that. And they continued to do it after she became the nominee.
So, first, this idea of hitting somebody hard is purely perspective. Give me 1 second. What? Yeah, this idea of hitting somebody hard is somewhat perspective. That's the first point. I'm going... Jesus Christ. Hold on, guys. Give me 1 second. Don Lemon, given his perspective on things, fair enough. This is his perspective. He said, I just looked at it and, this is what I saw from objective reality. I'm going to give my first argument, the argument that that comes to mind first, and the The one I think I believe in more so than anything else. And then I'm going to give why I have doubts about that argument. Yes, I have dual minds all the time, often. So in the first point, there's no such thing as objective reality, at least when we're talking about society itself. There is no such thing as objective reality. This is what you believe. This is your perspective of the world, and you're giving your perspective of the world based on the things that you weigh and you agree with and all this other stuff. So from your objective reality, all we get from that point is Don Lemon looks out at the world and he sees something that says, oh my God, they're hitting her hard on something. What did Bernie Sanders hit her hard on? People bitching and moaning about wanting health care. How dare they? People complaining about their jobs being shipped overseas. People complaining about the TPP being put into effect, where you're giving up U.S. sovereignty. People bitching and moaning about getting health care. How dare these people complain and bitch and moan about health care and education? How dare they do that? They're hitting her so hard. The reason I think Lemon believes they're hitting her hard is not, in fact, because they're hitting her hard per se. It's he understood, he looked at the society itself, and based on Lemon's own biases and the way Lemon weighs things, there are deficits. People are pissed off. And I'm saying deficits from the standpoint of Hillary Clinton. People want certain things. They voted for a president that screamed hope and change. And now you have this other scenario with Donald Trump, who's the epitome of change, even though he's not really the change that people actually want. But there's a faction of the society itself that says, we'll take it. We believe him more than we believe her. There were deficits in Hillary Clinton that Hillary Clinton did not want to make up for. And Bernie Sanders, just standing there, calling himself a democratic socialist, brought up and highlighted those deficits. Now, and just to make the point clear, the society itself wanted change. It was clear the society itself wanted change. This was not a status quo time. The very fact that Bernie Sanders existed, that he could stand there, right there, stand there in the first place, was in response to the deficits that were in the society itself. The fact that Bernie Sanders caught fire, moving throughout all of society itself, got across the fact that there were things that the society needed, society wanted, that the society were pushing for, that were not exemplified in Hillary Clinton herself, but they were in Sanders. Trump tried to pick up some of that, but ultimately it was Sanders. The guy calls himself a socialist. He's running around the country. He's not the most, he's not the most, let's say, finely put together politician. Ultimately, it was the things that he was saying. 30,000 people in something like New York. All these people flooding through the parks. A love fest. It's a love fest. Hillary Clinton couldn't fill a doghouse. And this man who nobody has paid attention to for God knows how long has been marginalized for 20 years or however long he was in Congress. And is filling stadiums. And the other opponent couldn't fill a doghouse. You want to talk about deficiencies and those deficiencies being highlighted by your candidate? Yes, those deficiencies were being highlighted by their candidate. But it wasn't because he was saying anything rough or hard or vicious against Hillary Clinton. The campaign against Obama and Clinton were vicious. Sanders didn't even want to hit her per se. But saying that the person has these speeches for Wall Street that they got a bunch of money for, that's not a hit. That's being honest. That's talking about what the person is doing and the failures versus what the public actually wants. You call that hitting hard. What I call that is the public wants certain things that you, Don Lemon, acknowledges just through your own cognitive processes that the candidate is deficient in. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about hitting her hard. He's highlighting her deficiencies, which at the very least you acknowledge just by your own thing, just by you saying this, acknowledges that she had magnificent deficiencies. At the very least, heft against what the society actually wanted. Your objective reality and the thing that you use, your cognitive processes to come up with the idea of what objective reality is. There is no solid objective reality per se. It's just your perspective. And in your perspective, your biases are giving you this idea that, yes, the society wanted change. And when I say biases, I don't mean that in a negative. I know often that means negative. I just mean how the person views the world, how they're weighing these things. It's getting across this idea that the public wants something different. This is not the time for status quo. Don Lemon, to some degree, is acknowledging that in the way that he's viewing reality. I would agree with him on this. And in acknowledging that this is not a status quo, he understands that Hillary Clinton is the status quo candidate. We probably will be in agreement with that. Sanders running in this contest just by being Sanders highlights the fact that I am not status quo and she is. That's so true. But that's not because he's hitting her hard. That's because of who she is and the deficits that are just built in her being a grossly weak candidate. It's her being a grossly weak candidate. Donald Trump. But the idea that Donald Trump or that Bernie Sanders hit her harder than Trump is nonsense. Trump is her political opponent. Trump is the person bringing up rape victims of Bill Clinton onto the stage when they're having a debate. Are you shitting me? Bernie Sanders didn't even want to talk about the emails. Barely wanted to really hit her per se until they got later into the campaign. If you're saying Bernie Sanders damaged her, you're only saying Bernie Sanders standing beside her on stage and having to run against her by not being or not having her deficiencies. Well, somehow Bernie Sanders hitting her hard. You just don't want to give Trump the time of day. That's what it is. And he doesn't necessarily want to give Trump the credit of winning that election. He wants to give that credit to anybody else except for Trump. No, Trump screamed about jobs. Hillary Clinton screamed about Trump. Trump was filling rallies. They were hate rallies, but he was filling stadiums. Clinton couldn't fill a doghouse. Trump hit her. And those hits were effective. And he hit her directly in the areas that she was deficient. This idea of public trusting her to do anything to change their lives in any tangible way. Clinton made herself as being, I am just standing here so you don't get Trump. And you're going to thank me for not getting Trump by electing me. Trump was just trying to get into that office. I don't think Trump thought he was going to win, but I do think the stuff that he was saying from the standpoint of jobs worked. I think acts about her emails or the Trans-Pacific Partnership worked. Those were things that the public wanted. The reason why he won was because the public wanted things that she either couldn't offer or that they did not believe that she would offer. By the way, the overwhelming majority of the people who voted for Sanders went for Clinton. I think it was like 80-something%. There was a larger percentage of people who were pro-Sanders that ended up voting for Clinton than were pro-Obama or that pro-Clinton that voted for Obama. Meaning, I'm making the point that there were a larger percentage of people who were pro-Sanders, Bernie-crats, that ended up voting for Clinton than there were Clinton-crats, whatever you want to call them, that ended up voting for Obama. Clinton, in that election with Obama, put more of a drag on Obama than Bernie Sanders ever did for Hillary Clinton. That's what I'm getting at. Now, the other part to that is, the reason why I said to myself, well, wait a minute, is that true? I mean, yes, it's true that his own way he's organizing the world, he's understanding that the world wanted something different other than status quo. In his head, he understands that Hillary Clinton was status quo. And I think in his head, he's looking at Sanders as exacerbating the failures of Clinton and exacerbating the deficits of her with regards to a political campaign. This point that Sanders supporters attacked her, yes, Sanders supporters attacked her because it's not what they wanted. The world, they wanted something different. She did not offer what they wanted in sufficient quantities to get them to not attack her. That part's true. But what does that have to do with Sanders? Sanders begged his supporters, shamed himself, begging his supporters to vote for that woman after going around the country saying that this woman, essentially was a crook. But he begged his supporters to do it. Went around the country begging his supporters. He had to deal with people booing him. Absolutely dealing with people booing him. But am I right? Is it possible, to any degree that's possible, that Sanders, being in the race, exacerbated Hillary Clinton's flaws to such a degree that those people were more susceptible to vote for Trump? I don't buy that per se, but I am open to somebody else making the argument. So, am I wrong on this? I put the number at the bottom. Feel free to call in. Is Don Lemon right? Did Bernie Sanders hurt or damage Hillary Clinton worse than Trump? Mind you, this is taking agency away from Trump, saying that Trump didn't win the election. You're making a point that Bernie Sanders essentially lost it for, as opposed to Trump winning it. I think that's nonsense. I think Hillary Clinton just lost. I think Trump won. I think Hillary Clinton lost because of her own failings, but it wasn't Sanders that did it. You don't get the guy begging for you to win the election, begging to get Hillary Clinton the election. I think cheating Sanders probably played a large role. I would even think look, there's a list of failings in that election. Hillary Clinton herself, the way she ran that election, the email stuff essentially being corrupt, all those things. Hello, what's your name and what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, Jamal? It's Rob.
What's going on, Rob?
All right, man. So the real thing is Hillary hurt Hillary.
Yes, Hillary hurt
It wasn't
Hillary.
Bernie.
Yes, Hillary hurt
It
Hillary.
wasn't Trump. It was her. If she wouldn't have done all that stuff that she did in the past, then this wouldn't be an issue.
Taking the
right?
speeches. She took those speeches. She took those speeches. She got those paid speeches. What, $200,000? Some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
For
Goldman
speech.
Sachs didn't put a gun to her head.
Nobody put a gun to her head.
You better go to the speech. Here, we're going to write the speech for you. Nobody did any of that.
Nobody did that.
This idea that we as voters, the plebes, oh my God, we actually are voting based on actual past actions and policy.
How dare they bring that up?
How dare they
bring that up?
Policy,
Yeah.
right? You know how we were hitting her on all the past things that she promoted from
TPP,
Bill Clinton's
yep.
Republican presidency, right? And all the things that she was doing while she was a senator and while she was Secretary of
State.
Secretary of State.
I mean,
right?
you talking about pay-for-play politics. I mean, they're giving her
right,
money in the State Department. Like, she's literally in the State Department, and they're giving Bill Clinton money, and they're getting the foundation money. You know, Rachel Maddow, in one of the interviews while she was running for office, Rachel Maddow, I remember this. If I can find this, God, I'm looking for this. Rachel Maddow has a conversation with Hillary Clinton. It's supposedly a town hall, but she just asked her questions.
Right.
And it's the most tepid interview you would ever see in your life. And Rachel Maddow says, she brings up, hey, the Clinton Foundation, you know, people have questions about this because, you know, you're in office. Are you going to keep the Clinton Foundation when you're president of the United States? It looks bad that all these foreign governments are giving you money while you're in it. Rachel Maddow even asked this. And Rachel Maddow was in a tank for Clinton like nobody's business. The throwaway interview for the most part. Hillary Clinton told her no. She told her out no. We do God's work. We're going to continue to do God's work. And, you know, it's like, how dare you bring this up? That's what lost it. If you're looking for the loss, it's stuff like that. It's the cumulative impact of being corrupt.
You know, they're behaving like you would expect them to behave. And what I mean by that is they are the so-called upper echelon. They never do anything wrong, right?
I do declare.
And when they do end up, and then when they do get called out and say, "Hey, this smells like shit," right? They're like, "No, that's you. That's you. You're the one." And then they turn around and say, "No, you're crazy. Why are you so crazy for bringing up all of these flaws? Like, isn't that what voters are supposed to do?
How dare you ask for Medicare for all? How dare you try to get your kid to go to school without being in thousands of dollars of debt? How dare you want this thing of this kind of debt off the backs of these kids who want to just have a life? How dare you not want these wars and not want regime change? How dare you bring that stuff up? I mean, he hurt Hillary Clinton by bringing up things that the American public wanted. Think about that. I mean, think about the conversation that these guys are having.
But hold on. But see, you have to see what they're doing. They are trying to shift and control the conversation to be about all this things that really would not affect business, like abortion, gay rights, civil rights. Those things don't affect business. In fact, they help business, right?
Yeah.
So just
more voters.
Scream and yell about all that. We don't want you talking about all this other stuff. Yeah. No, we're not going to talk about income inequality. No, we're not going to talk about any of that.
Right there.
Because you talking about that, you're crazy.
You're right there. Income inequality.
Who raised you?
That's where it is.
Who raised you to talk about real things that are affecting not only myself but my neighbors and my community? You know, you're in a fantasy land.
That's
it, Rob. That's really how they're trying. And they're trying to make you seem like you're the one that's crazy. I forgot that psychological term that they use, but like it's like this term. It's like this thing where you're bringing something up, but then what they're trying to do is make you self-doubt, and at the same time make you seem like you're the crazy one.
Yeah, for bringing it up.
Like
yeah.
Or I forgot what there's a psychological term for that, but basically what they're trying to do. They are just trying to like, I think it's called gaslighting.
Gaslighting, yeah.
You know, they're gaslighting the hell out of you to make you think you're crazy because you wanna vote based on issues.
Yeah.
And I just find that bizarre because voters are actually now starting to, because we have a lot of accessibility with the internet. We can look up people's voting records, and in the past we couldn't really do that as much, and it wasn't really a part of it. And then now it's like, what the hell are these people doing?
That's what it is. I mean, they're in a different climate. Like, it's not, it's a few things. You don't have like one source of media, meaning all of the media is not organized within just one monolithic group anymore. Meaning, so the thought processes of people that are involved in the process, they're getting their media in different places, so they're thinking in different ways. Now, some of that, of course, is insane. You know, it's like they're aliens eating babies. There's that section. But there's also the section of people looking at things a different way, but giving factual information, giving their point of view. So you have this older section of the population that's still looking at mainstream news and everything else. And you have this other section that they've lost that is not. And so those people are looking at different things. And they're looking at the voting records like, you guys were pushing NAFTA? I mean, this has fucked us over royally. We don't like this. You're pushing the TPP now. Why do you think this is going to come out different than what NAFTA came? These are people asking questions. You have kids who grew up in an internet age who's looking at old clips of Hillary Clinton calling people super predators and looking at this woman, you know, backing these policies, taking the Iraq war vote, talking about weapons of putting a missile defense shield in another country. You're hearing her saying all this stuff, and you're looking at the media and saying, I don't like this woman. I don't like her. Now, they're trying to say this is purely related to Sanders. Now, you can make the point that says Sanders kind of organized people. Fair enough. But let's be honest, and at the very least, these people had a disposition of something that they wanted different. Like, I don't think you get Obama talking about hope and change if people didn't want hope and change. And I don't think you get a Trump. Well, I don't even think you could have Bernie Sanders in that case, if that's not true.
The writing was on the wall. You know, even back when Obama ran for the first time, it was on the wall.
It was on the wall.
People were tired of this everywhere. Everywhere this was an issue, you know? And Obama just made it worse. I mean, I live in California, right? Man, Jamal, you can't just imagine how much
homelessness.
10 cities are all over the place. And, you know, and instead of our state dealing with this, you know what they're doing? They're having police and the police force pick up all these homeless people, and then they build these huge 10-inch fences to block them off so that they don't come back and pitch it.
That's amazing.
Man, it's horrible, man.
I saw this other thing. They had these robots outside of like an SPCA kicking away homeless.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, dude. I mean, the homelessness is out of control, and a lot of that has to do with you know, all the big tech firms. Because I live in the Bay Area, so you know, I'm around Google, all that stuff, right? And they are bringing a lot of people in, and they're pricing everybody out of the area.
That's
right?
I see. The prices are spiking.
Yes, they are like skyrocketing because there wasn't anything in place for it to stop the rise of
like price controls.
That it did.
Let me ask you this.
So
explain this to me. California, my wife and I are going traveling in a couple of months. We're going to leave the country and go for 6 months. I would prefer to go longer, but she wants to come back to the States for a while. One of the places, at this point, it's like, where do you want to live? So one of the thoughts she was like, hey, you want to live in California? California, it's so bizarre to me. You guys are like the 6th largest economy in the world at this point. You guys have mandated solar power houses, meaning solar panels on houses. This was something I've screamed about over and over again, that it's like, why are people paying an energy bill when they could put solar panels or something like that? We should help people do that to take away that particular expense. How on earth are you guys supposed to the lefty progressive city or state,
what you think,
and then end up with that much homelessness in the country? That's amazing to me. How does that happen?
I mean, when you have major tech firms dominating all the time, especially here in the Bay Area, right? They dominate everything out here as far as creating this massive income and wealth inequality kind of thing, right? So you have all these people coming in from all over within the country, even all over the world, right?
Yeah.
and they're paying high salaries, and California was not doing anything to force Apple to say, you're going to be hiring, and you're going to be bringing all this traffic, and you're going to be bringing all this in. There was nothing for Apple to tamp down, I guess, so to speak, right? So that way, like, add housing or something, right?
Oh, I see.
There has to be some kind of
affordable housing,
so that way it doesn't create this shock. And so everywhere in the Silicon Valley, like the rents and everything are so sky high that a lot of those people started moving up north, in the Bay, where San Francisco, Berkeley, and all of that stuff. They started moving here, and they're saying, "Hey, these are dirt cheap pricing for rent for apartments out here." And they just thought, "Hey, well, you know what? This 2-bedroom apartment that was once $1,300 now it's $2,500.
We can spike the prices." I see.
Yeah.
This is kind of it's kind of like jobs, like race to the bottom, like corporate tax cuts. It's like the incentive that's built into the process itself. Once the people don't necessarily guard one or two, like so for example, so let's take Britain for example, and Britain has this thing where they're going through Brexit.
I've been wanting to debate you on this, man.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
well, Brexit is going on. Britain is going through Brexit, and going through Brexit.
Yeah.
One of the things that they were trying to do is, well, how are we going to compete? If you're in the European Union, there's certain rules and standards to make sure companies play by certain rules and everything else. Well, now Britain has to find another way to compete. So Britain says, I have an idea. And Theresa May is like, I'm going to cut corporate taxes. Now, in cutting corporate taxes, the point in this is I can try to entice corporations to come to this particular city or this particular state. And we do this in the United States. We do the same thing. So you would have one state that says, I'm going to cut corporate taxes.
But that's ridiculous.
But that's what they do. They do that.
No locality should be doing that to begin with.
But they do
that. They
that.
shouldn't have to be sitting here being at the behest of these corporations to be begging on hands and knees.
That's my point.
Basically destroying a local economy.
That's my point.
Because, they're trying to drag this in. That's ridiculous.
But that's
my
point. But the incentive is for them to do that. I mean, think of it from the standpoint of, okay, we're going to drop the corporate tax rate. So Amazon, for example, was supposed to be going to Seattle.
Yeah.
Amazon, billions of dollars. Paid nothing in taxes, and not just paid nothing in taxes, got almost $300 million back in taxes, despite being one of the wealthiest. Jeff Bezos got $9 billion over the last week. That's insane.
Right.
But that's what happens. That's what takes place. Now, so one state, wait. So one city says, okay, if that city is doing that to get that guy in, well, I'm going to cut mine. So that city says, well, we're cutting our state taxes to something else. Another state says, well, we can beat that. We're not even going to cut our taxes. We're going to give you the employees' money who was supposed to give us taxes. We'll give that money to you. And now you have this race to the bottom in regards to companies coming to particular states, as opposed to all states holding the line saying this is our bottom line. Now, for the housing thing, the incentive works in the opposite way, even though the incentive is there nonetheless. It's saying, well, I'm going to raise rents because these tech people can afford these rents, and this is great property. So then other people say, okay, we can't afford it, so we're going to move out to the coast. The other people in the coast says, hey, we have all these people coming out to the coast. So now we're going to increase our rates because now clearly we have a lot of interest and a lot of people who are trying to get housing, not realizing or missing or not even caring that the reason why those people are moving out there is because they can't afford the housing in the other place. So if you raise the rents in those other places, those people are not going to be able to afford that housing either. The incentive is working in both ways, but the incentive is there nonetheless for people to maximize their profit in the process. It's gross in how it's taking place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the idea, and that's what happened here. There was nothing, there's no buffer stock or anything to prevent these inflationary kinds of pressures that occur. These are artificial, by the way. These aren't real inflationary pressures, so to speak, right? It's just, you're just bringing a mass load of people into the state, and there's nothing to control any of this stuff. So that's why rents are just like through the roof out here, dude. I mean,
that's insane.
A 1-bedroom, a studio apartment will be about $1,500, man.
Are you serious? Do you realize my wife wasn't paying that much for a house that we were living in? Like rent here, you could get a decent property here in Virginia. If you're talking about an apartment for about $700, if you're talking about not great but not horrible, maybe $500. Like if you're paying $1,000 for a pretty decent spot, I couldn't imagine paying $1,500 for like a single bedroom. That's insane. Like unless it's, there's one property here in Virginia that's in downtown that's like the top floor, maybe, but Jesus Christ. What did you want to hit me about with Brexit? What do you want to hit me about with Brexit? What did I say that you disagree with?
I disagree with a lot of your position, especially when you say this whole thing about, what do you got to say about this whole hard borderline between
hard border,
the UK, right? Okay, my big problem with this, where you're saying like, oh, well, the EU is going to annex Ireland and Scotland.
I didn't say they were. No, wait. Just so we're clear on our positions. I said that the EU is talking about annex. So I showed a speech where one of the guy who was the chief negotiator for the European Union.
I saw that.
He was talking about it. It's not that they'll do it, but he was talking about it.
But like the premise, hold on. But like your premise to me is like, this is such a disastrous issue, and that the UK is never going to be able to get out of this whole issue. First of all, they issue their own currency.
No.
That.
But the issue has nothing to do with the currency, Rob. The issue has to do with trying to create. There's Good Friday Agreement between Ireland and Britain. In that Good Friday Agreement, this idea of creating a border between those two things breaks that agreement. Those countries have been at war for God knows how long. The Good Friday Agreement was the thing to put the hostilities to rest.
And I believe this. If I was Theresa May, I would put pressure on both Ireland and Scotland and say, all right, you know what? We're going to put up a vote of independence so that way you can go ahead and become the next Greece, because that's what's going to happen to you. And I 100% guarantee that, because they are not a high exporting nation or country, whatever you want to call it.
Do you realize, wait a minute, do you realize that Theresa May has been trying to stop Scotland from having a vote of independence? She doesn't want to preside. She does not want to preside over the breaking up of the UK.
Why?
Why doesn't she want to prescribe? Do you realize when they had that vote to leave the EU, David Cameron left? He left. He said, I'm done. I failed.
In shame.
Right, in shame. There is no way Theresa May or any other prime minister wants to see the breakup of the European Union, of the UK. There's no way. They don't want us to, like, no country. That's like saying, might as well let Texas go. Fuck Texas. Texas can go fuck itself. Texas, no president is going to sit there and say, yes, I want my country to be broken up.
Right, but see, the thing is that they've been at this limbo for hundreds of years, I think, or something like that, right?
But they're not in limbo. They're the United Kingdom. They're the UK. They're not in limbo.
No. This whole screaming and yelling between, especially Ireland, that they want to leave they want to break away from the UK.
You mean
right?
Scotland? No, Scotland. You mean Scotland?
Scotland. I'm sorry. Scotland wants to break away from the UK, right? Right. I don't. I quite frankly would put it in the situation because they don't issue their own currency.
No, they don't.
This is all about currency issuing, right?
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah, I know you're looking at it looking at it through the lens of currency, and I'm just saying it's not. It's not about the currency. Like it's the customs thing is the point. How goods are going to be traded between the UK and the European Union is the problem. That's the point. That's the reason why they're talking about this border.
But like, why are you making a big deal out of bilateral agreements that they can have with all those countries?
But they can't have. But no, if you're a part of the European Union, then you're stuck with playing by the European Union's rules. One of those rules is you cannot trade with these other countries. Now, if they come up with an agreement with the UK, meaning the European Union, where they can try to trade with the countries in the European Union, that's great, but that means Britain is going to have to follow their rules. It's not a la carte. If Britain has to follow their rules, then Britain is going to have to conform its rules to the European Union, which means that they're not, they're not a sovereign government at that point, meaning they still have to kowtow. Theresa May's problem here is we're taking you out of the customs. We're taking you out. We're leaving the UK with the Union. Great. Now, what are you going to do in order to make up the trade for this? Are you going to trade with the European Union? If she says yes, then right off the bat, you're stuck going with the rules and regulations of the European Union if you want to trade with the European Union. How do you, she's stuck in this quagmire. How do you get out?
But so what you're telling me that they can't negotiate anything? That's ridiculous to have just hardline rules, too.
You can call it what you want, but do you believe that the European Union wants to let Britain out and give them some kind of trade deals that they're not going to give?
No.
Like, what would be the impetus for other countries to stay in the European Union if Britain gets a sweetheart deal? They're going to put the screws to them.
well, quite frankly, I don't believe that there should be this nonsense of all these countries that have given up their currency to some stupid euro that no country, especially a country like Greece, that is in a massive depression. So that's really where I stand on that.
I agree with you on that, Rob. That I agree with you.
They should be able to have their own currency, or at the minimum have a parallel currency, so that way when times are bad in their country, they're able to be spending and putting money in, so people aren't dying all over the place unnecessarily.
So should each state have their own currency?
Where, in the United States?
Yeah.
I don't know if I want. I don't know if I can completely subscribe to that.
Wait a minute, Rob. You just said each country in the EU should have their own currency.
Yeah, but see, the EU is a very different thing because these are countries that came together. So there's local, state, and federal governments in each one of these places. So it's a very, very different thing than here in the United States.
They are, but they're trying to be like states. I mean, ultimately, what the European Union is essentially trying to act like is a state.
Stupid.
No, look, let me be very specific when I say this, and the reason why I asked the question in this way. They're trying to come closer and closer together, and they're trying to figure out this kind of way of melding themselves together to become this kind of larger union. I mean, you have the United States, who've accumulated all of these states who could be countries if they wanted to, into their own little thing and to become the United States. The European Union is trying to do something similar. They've just one of the largest, together as the European Union, have one of the largest consumer bases across the planet. Yeah. So in their minds, we're going to try to bring ourselves together. There's certain incentives, there's certain advantages for doing this. The fuck up here is the euro. Like if they had their monetary policy to be somewhat different, it wouldn't be that bad. But the monetary policy, what's the gentleman's name? He's Scottish. He's an economist. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. That guy
explains it amazingly.
I don't really like that guy. He's
you don't like
right,
him? Oh, come on. I can't think of his name, but he explains it. But at least give him the benefit of that. He explains it really well with the problem of the euro. This thing of, well, these countries can't control their currency. You have situations where they actually do need to spend, and Germany doesn't necessarily allow them to spend because they have to balance their budgets in this kind of weird way. That's weird. I agree
a modernized version of a gold standard.
What if?
So if people want to go back to this stupid metal, that's what's going to happen.
Let me ask you this: What if they changed their countries around a bit so that there were monetary policy at the top? Meaning it's similar to the way states were, or to the way we've organized ourselves, the United States, with regards to monetary policy.
What you're talking, I mean, see, look, I would be cool if they had like a fiscal union.
Yes.
Right? There's two ways to go about this, really, Jamal. For real. There's the only two ways. Either they all break up and they own country and they issue, they have their own sovereign currency again, and they kind of do it like before this whole euro thing happened.
Right.
Or they have a fiscal union, which is something kind of more modeled here in the United States.
Yeah.
A lot of their entire banking system there has to be a lot of different rules and regulations as far as who can be issuing the currency and how can they issue currency, or the euro if they want to keep using that nonsense. I mean, there has to be some kind of complicated thing like that, or they just kind of break apart and then go back to like a bilateral agreement or what.
What I would tell you on this very specific point, one of the guys who called in yesterday was from Ireland. He was talking about the European Union, and he was saying how the European Union invested in this country when Britain didn't. And all of the things that they added that came from the European Union, essentially expending and investing to try to bring up some of the countries that were worse off up to snuff, like highways.
Yeah, but they have a 3% rule, and they're not doing that anymore.
Oh, look, I don't
know that, right?
I disagree. I agree with you. There are issues with the way the European Union is set up, especially from a financial standpoint. I mean, like you have countries like Britain or Germany. Germany does gangbusters because Germany sells cars and technology and everything else. Well, it's selling that stuff, meaning it's getting the money in, but the countries that are buying it aren't necessarily producing anything, so they're essentially just spending. And so you end up with this trade surplus inside the European Union. Okay, well, you have a trade surplus. Well, despite this trade surplus, this country who's essentially have the trade surplus has money leaving that country because they're not necessarily producing.
Right, so everybody else is at a deficit.
Right, exactly. You end up with a deficit, but they don't like deficits. You're in a deficit. Right, but Germany doesn't like deficits. So it's like you have this weird mesh of a system where these guys don't own their own currency. And the same token, the monetary policy isn't set up for that mesh. It's a little weird.
Right.
But to be fair to them, they didn't
That's why-
start off as this kind of European
Or
Union.
they should
started
have like
off as
a
something else.
like a fiscal union. I mean, is like they all unify more along like how we are unified, right?
Yeah.
And they are doing maybe something like a revenue sharing kind of thing, meaning the euro, whoever is in a trade deficit or whoever's in imbalances within their own government, the euro should be issued to them so that way they can fill that gap. So that would be the revenue sharing that occurs.
Yeah.
And none of that is even occurring either because they said, no, 3% rule of your GDP and that's it, which is ridiculous because, like you just pointed out, that there's some states that just cannot export.
Yeah.
They are natural. They're going to be perpetual importers no matter what.
Yeah. And by the way, Germany's still getting off on it. I mean, because they're buying their cars. So it's not a situation where this stuff isn't taking place. Rob, I'm going to let you go because I have another caller. But thank you for calling, man. I appreciate your call.
Yeah, man. You take care.
Have a good one. Man. Zorro. What's happening, Zorro?
Hey, I was kind of like trolling you in the chat because I wanted to go to the gym and you had the other guy on for so long.
I'm sorry, Zorro. What's going on, man?
Anyway, I know it's like weird how many progressives I have to reach out to because, I oppose the Syrian war even though I am more of a conservative.
Yeah.
And, I think there's a number of avenues where, people have to reach out and agree on certain things.
Yeah, we converge. I don't think we're as separate as the media makes us out to be.
So in all the research I've been doing I did send you the Mattis file a while ago, and I'm still working on more related to that. If you did get a chance to read it, let me know.
Okay.
But what we're dealing with here in Ohio, and I hate to do this. I really can't stand the guy, but I had to do a video earlier this week defending Dennis Kucinich.
What?
For all.
Did you now? Go for it. Go ahead. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Dennis Kucinich, they're trying to paint him as some sort of Russian, Syrian hybrid, meta Godzilla or something.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. I mean, I personally, I'm not going to vote for him. I think he is the true expression of a lot of the
he's a lefty
policies of the progressive camp.
Yeah, he's a lefty.
Yeah, but to call him a Russian agent, I think is pure propaganda. And I went and I researched it. I went to the FEC website, and the same person that they accuse him of taking donations from, who's a pro-Syrian, gave donations to Ro Khanna and to Kamala Harris.
Wow!
In past election cycles.
That's amazing.
And Kucinich himself had alleged that he gave some to Ted Strickland, who used to be our governor here, but I couldn't find evidence of that. But it's just selective outrage, in my opinion. It's, you can disagree with a person and criticize him without making up outright lies and exaggerating things.
That's right. No, I agree with you, man. When stuff comes up for Trump every so often, and I'm like, this is nonsense. It's like you guys are attacking him on something that's bogus. Like, yeah, you can oppose something. I can give a list of things that I don't particularly like Trump on, but I can also call BS when media or somebody else is pushing something that's utter nonsense. It's like, just because I don't like him doesn't necessarily mean I need to make shit up about him. And I like that, man. Good damn point.
Yeah, I did do, the same thing happened like later that week. By the way, Tim Canova, I actually, even though I've never been a Democrat, or I guess I was a Democrat before I could vote, but Tim Canova, who I actually donated to a couple years ago, I saw the piece in McClatchy about him also, the pipeline being a big Russian plot, and RT sending down, people, we are against pipeline for Tovarish Putin and whatever. It was just such an awfully researched article that they did about Mr. Canova.
Putting a knife in him.
I think he's actually. I think if I lived in Florida, I might actually vote for the person because, personally, there's a lot of ecology issues that I think I would agree with him on.
Yeah.
So
I like him. He was on the show. He came on for an interview. He ran against Deborah Wasserman-Schultz. They destroyed the ballots. Somebody was telling him, it's like, dude, don't just resign and actually try to verify the fact that you've lost that race if you lost the race. And he goes to try to verify the ballots, and they tell him the ballots have been destroyed. but we made a copy. And he's like, I don't care about your copy. Where are the ballots themselves? We destroyed those ballots. What do you mean you destroyed those ballots? You've just broken the law. Not just broke the law, it's against the law from the standpoint, if a case is in court, that you can't necessarily destroy evidence when the judge may actually want to see the evidence. They've destroyed the ballots themselves in Florida. Canova went to one Democrat after the next trying to get assistance on him, saying, this is illegal, this is illegal. And they all ignored him. It's amazing. And so Canova said, screw it, I'm done. And he went, and he's running now as an independent in Florida. So
that's why I really need help from, creators like you on the left, because there are people that I've interviewed that they would want to interview with you guys about the 2 DNC delegates regarding the smear about Russian trolls on Facebook groups and stuff like that. So, please let me know if you're willing to have an interview with them.
So the DNC delegates thing, I think if I'm not mistaken, I may have read that. So this is the people who were saying essentially part of the groups where they were lying about the Russia stuff, where the people in the delegates were saying, okay, maybe I'm lying. I have this thing in my head on something that I read stuff for the channel. I'm reading. I have to read so much, like just over the content. So there's stuff that I might have read that is starting to blur. So it's possible, but I don't remember for certain. So I'm going to say no. But the DNC delegates thing sounds familiar to me. I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
You have like a couple minutes for me to explain?
Yeah, go for it. You're good.
So essentially in March 2017, Huffington Post's Ryan Grimm, who you probably are very familiar
I remember
with.
this. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So he put out an article citing a person named John Mattis, who I've named this project the Mattis File after him. And
wait.
Mattis
just so I'm clear, this is the thing where essentially Ryan Grimm got it wrong. Or did Ryan Grimm get trolled, or did Ryan Grimm get essentially suckered into doing this story?
I think he got baited, and he never came clean about it. And I don't know him, so it's anybody's guess. I can't accuse him directly of promoting a story that's wrong. But if you do some minimal research, like I've done, into the particulars of that group. This guy claimed to be an administrator on the group, and he said that there was an avalanche of new people in September 2016 into this group who were trying to sway Bernie Sanders voters in California away from voting for Hillary Clinton. And apparently, first of all, if you're a Facebook administrator, as you might be, and I've been on certain groups, all you have to do is deny people that request to join, and then you're done. So there's no problem. I mean, if he was an administrator, he could have solved the problem without any issue. So that was the first hole in the story. The second hole in the story, or the one that actually did get my attention before I read Ryan Grimm's story, was that in February 2018, this year, when there was this whole indictment of the 13 Russian trolls, which is progressing very nicely if you've been paying attention. They're about to throw it out of court. But anyway, Politico had this reporter named...
Stupid. Go ahead.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's too stupid. It's too stupid.
Yeah, so they Politico, they had 3 articles that were basically just badgering Bernie Sanders, who again, I would not vote for, but I'm going to be fair to. They were badgering him about allegations within the indictment that people within his campaign had been influenced or something about people, Bernie Sanders, being used for whatever.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. So they badgered him, and he actually claimed, there was somebody who was affiliated with us that warned the Clinton campaign in September. So then they reached this John Mattis, and he says, no, nobody, I never worked for the Bernie campaign.
Yeah.
They never paid me or something.
That's right. I remember this article. Yeah, go ahead.
So then like a week later, they reached out to him for a little clarification. He's like, yeah, I reported it, but no thanks to Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
I actually reported it. He said he reported it to American Bridge 21st Century.
Yeah.
Now, both of us have heard that organization, right?
Yeah.
So don't you think it's a little odd? I mean, especially you, but both of us have read about Bernie Sanders versus super PACs, and this is a super PAC run by David Brock. Why would a Bernie Sanders former supporter reach out to a David Brock
organization
super PAC?
It is bizarre. So I read the article. I did read the Matt file. As you started explaining, and all that. Oh yeah, I remember this. So the guy who used to run that
yeah.
particular organization, you're essentially saying the guy was somewhat of a hack. He already had this kind of Russia stuff before all of this took place, meaning he was somewhat primed to just kind of toe this particular line and not necessarily be the most forthcoming. Meaning he's not the most forthcoming witness that Bernie Sanders groups were inundated with Russian trolls. The guy is somewhat of a Russophobe, or it came across that way.
Well, the evidence is pointing, or at least according to the people that I've talked to in California, they believe that he was an operative of that super PAC within their grassroots movement.
Fascinating. And that Ryan Grimm.
And he was never, in fact, Jamal, he was never, in fact, according to them, an administrator on that group.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I am amazing that. Yeah, man, I am perfectly okay with talking to them. I'm more than perfectly okay with talking to them.
I'll copy you on an email to them. I haven't been able to hear from them for the past week, maybe because they're all busy.
Yeah.
But there's four possible people actually that would talk to you, and we're going to keep researching. Me and a couple other YouTube creators.
Because I saw the Ryan Grimm article. I think Hard News Network showed it where they were doing this. I think it was 2 articles. When I read articles,
I wrote those.
Oh, okay. When I do articles, I usually go from like link to link. And so it was like the first article dealing with, this guy being somewhat, this guy is saying that he was part of this Bernie Sanders group. And it's like, was he really part of a Bernie Sanders group? Look at the other stuff that this guy did. This guy seemed to be somewhat of a, off the rails. And then it was the article talking about Matt or Ryan Grimm. Did Ryan Grimm get taken for a ride on this? When Ryan Grimm publicized this bit of information, not necessarily checking the source of seeing who this guy actually was that he was going after. Yeah, both of those were fascinating. I had the opportunity to read both of those. I'm going to read them,
and
of course. But
if you look at the guy's actual material, I went to his website, and this is a guy complaining about fake news. So he proudly featured on his website, news articles that supposedly mention his name. Some of them are from, for example, the New York Times or whatever, but some of them are from like basically local, basically the type of paper you pick out at a bait shop or something, the OB rag, which is in Ocean Bay, California or something, which I guess is fine. But would you, if you're like a big time journalist or investigative reporter like him, would you feature that on your website? I don't know.
I don't think so. Honestly, I would feature anything that I was in, but that's just me. But if I had 20 other top ones, would I feature the smaller ones? Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, but beyond that, there were ones that were from defunct websites that apparently were never real news websites, like one from France called uzoj.com, which, it leads you to like basically dead links and whatever.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who's trying to tell Americans to scrutinize what fake news is, and he's featuring these fly-by-night news organizations.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep working on it. We're gonna try to get a little more incriminating evidence on it, Jamal.
Yeah.
But I really, I appreciate whatever help I can get from people, especially people who are more on the Bernie side of things. I think, obviously, you're not going to get me to support him, but I do support the right of people to have another choice, the third choice,
whether you support Sanders or not,
to believe in the two-party system.
Whether you support Sanders or not, if I keep saying that it's not, I don't think people are as divided as I think they said we are. That's the first point. The second point, I don't like this Russia nonsense. I think it's dangerous, and I think it's somewhat problematic. And so I think that this stuff was made out of whole cloth in order to obfuscate the failures of the Democratic Party. That's what I think. That's what I think that to my core until I see something different. I think it's bogus. The people who are propped up in this kind of infiltration of the Bernie Sanders campaign, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they had some of these people inside of either some kind of Facebook groups or anything. I'll give you an example. When the Utah convention, during the Utah convention, they cheated. Wasn't Nevada? I'm sorry, doing Nevada convention.
Nevada, yeah.
Yeah, Nevada. They cheated Sanders supporters.
I heard about that.
Outright cheated him. Like literally, Hillary Clinton's people couldn't get up out of bed in the morning, and so they didn't get to the convention in time. And he ended up with a process where Sanders should have had more votes than Clinton people. Well, Clinton people turned up and said, we're going to exclude certain delegates from coming into the building. Most of those, the overwhelming majority of those, were Sanders delegates. Then you get into the rally itself, or get into the building itself, and they shut down the debate with a floor call vote when it was clear that the Sanders supporters were louder and there were more of them. Like, it was this thing of, they just robbed them outright. And the Sanders supporters were screaming, pissed off that they did this. And then it's like, we're going to shut down debate? Yeah, flareable, yeah, everybody's all, eyes have it. They shut it down. Now, Clinton's camp comes out and says the Bernie Sanders supporters were throwing chairs. The media takes up and says Sanders supporters throwing chairs. Sanders supporters shouldn't be throwing chairs. I mean, this is horrible. Sanders supporters are throwing chairs. Missing the point that they cheated them. Now, they weren't throwing chairs. There's no video of anybody throwing chairs, but they use the fact of the throwing chairs thing as a way to kind of gut the fact that they cheated in that process, outright cheated in that process. And there was video of them cheating in the process. What I believe, you know, am I shocked to believe that they might have had people in Bernie groups, so there are people who are claiming to be in Bernie groups to kind of push this Russia nonsense? I am not. I'm not shocked in the least. I paint this as just politics or everyday politics, and it's sad that it's everyday politics, but I would paint that as everyday politics.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, many people are telling you guys to get over 2016, but they don't get over 2016. The Democrats. I don't bellyache. I was a Rand Paul supporter. You know, I was a Rand Paul supporter. I don't bellyache every day that he's not president. I'd much rather have him as president, but it's, you know, actually the DNC had a hand in that too. They were promoting through their media contacts having you know, the chaos candidate, Mr. Trump, as their candidate.
Yes, they were.
You know,
and not just Trump, by the way. What's her name? One of the other Democrats was doing that. If it wasn't Feinstein, it was another one. What is her name? It's not in Ohio. But the woman was essentially putting out ads for the other Republican candidate because they realized he was the worst candidate. They're doing for Joe Manchin. They're trying to get the clown candidates in West Virginia because they believe that clown candidate.
Blankenship.
Yeah, they think Joe Manchin. They think that's the only person Joe Manchin can beat. They do it all over the United States. They want. Look, my argument has always been these guys are using batshit crazy Republicans as a political tool, so they can say we're not batshit crazy, and that being the main standard that you use to elect a Democrat. That's really fucked up politics, though, when you think about it. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, the idea that these guys are trying to get batshit crazy candidates just so you'll be forced, almost like with a gun to your head, to vote for the Democrat is appalling. That's utterly appalling. Yeah, that is what they're doing.
It's a sad state, and you know I'm not crazy about voting for a Republican this year.
Yeah.
Or you know if it becomes too ridiculous, I might not vote at all. But you know the fact is, and you know just one remark I'll leave at this point, but I do want to say concerning the EU, one thing. So I was a huge supporter of the Brexit, and just one remark. What has happened since then, when they've affirmed that the EU is trying to build a new army, that what happened with the Catalonia crisis.
Wait, put a pin in that. Yes, they are.
What's that?
No, I said put a pin in that. I don't think people realize that. The EU. So I'm not a fan of Nigel Farage, but I used to enjoy Nigel Farage being in the EU. And Nigel Farage, it kind of made this point like, you guys are partially responsible for the Ukrainian thing, with this kind of breakdown in the Ukrainian government. And you guys are talking about building an army and talking about opposing Russia. And Nigel Farage is like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? You guys are losing your minds. They're trying to build, they're talking about building an army. This economic union, supposedly this kind of ever closer economic union of sorts, is now talking about building an army. Go ahead. There's certain things I like to put pin in so people can understand what we're talking about. Go ahead.
Right, and that's why, you know, I think I was always kind of a fan of his points, and then another thing that happened with Catalonia, who I've interviewed people 3 times concerning Catalonia.
Yeah.
When the Catalan people wanted to separate from Spain, the majority of them were very, very pro-EU. Mm-hmm. Then when you know the ballot went down, it was just an unofficial ballot, but even so, there was all the intimidation and you know, police repression against them.
Yeah.
Did the EU do anything to validate their right to, you know, a fair trial or anything? Not really. They actually took the side of the government.
Yes,
so I don't believe in the EU as an institution. I think it just shows the problem of the central not responsive to its constituents.
Centralized authority. It's a little weird. I mean,
Yeah.
it is strange. I mean, you have these unelected people, and then they would argue, well, we were elected by a representative. Fuck, you weren't elected by the people themselves. You guys, like, you have this kind of, like, president and everything else, but these people weren't elected by the people who are in the EU. You know what I mean? It's like the elites decided to elect certain people within the European Union. That's one part by itself. It's centralized authority, and you know, it's like anything else when you have centralized authority. At a certain point, it gets so diffuse that it's hard for the people who are at the bottom of the scale to actually have any influence at the top. I'm not against Brexit. I guess my feeling, I'm agnostic towards this whole thing of Brexit. My concern is for Britain. If I'm being honest, I like Britain. I don't know what it is. I just have this thing in my head where I have this kind of affinity or like for Britain. I don't necessarily.
Well, you're an Oasis fanatic like me.
I do like Oasis.
Those unibrows, you just can't resist them.
I just can't resist the band. And I don't want people to take a hit. And Theresa May, I think she's incompetent. Or at the very least, she has certain priorities.
Oh, we think she's incompetent too. Those of us that are Brexit support, or people on the right that support Brexit, we think she's incompetent. So, you know, I mean, again, there's weird places where we agree where you wouldn't think we agree.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
But that's just it. When I started doing this channel, I got past that thing of I didn't have that thing in me of, okay, we're just going to disagree on all this stuff. I started to realize that people, they're dovetail on certain things. Like on issues of war, there's going to be a dovetail. I like half of what Rand Paul says. Like him. Half of what Ron Paul says. Love it. If I only knew that half of Ron Paul, I would love him to death. I watch Ron Paul when he's on that channel. I can't think of the name of it. He has his own institute. There's certain things that Ron Paul says when he's talking about war that you would think came directly from a lefty. Like it's these areas where we converge, and I think we should yell at the top of our lungs on those areas where we converge. So, dude, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
All right, thank you. I gotta go to the gym and work off some of these, one of these chins, but I'm gonna share this with. I'm gonna grab this video. I'm gonna share it with the people that I talk to, and please reply. Let us know when we can have one of these people on.
Yes,
and
it'll be soon.
you know, get a little more exposure, because I think it's very important for you and the movement that you're a part of.
No, send it, man. I definitely want you guys on. I read that file. I was going to do that thing, and for whatever reason, I didn't end up doing it. I even remember highlighting it at certain parts of it as I started stepping through the story. Yes,
that's okay. We're all busy people.
Yeah. Send it. Definitely send it. I would love to talk to him.
Don't look back in anger.
No. A lot of people are like, what the hell is he talking about? It's a song. It's one of their best. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
All right. You too.
All right. Guys, I appreciate you guys. How to contact Press It Wolf. Fucking love my audience. One of my, Jeff Kuntz, as we were talking, I was like, I have no idea how to contact Wolf. No, Robert Wolf. And he just sends the email, how to contact Richard Wolf. Fucking A. Fucking A. All right, guys, I want to thank you all for showing up. It's a Sunday, so it's kind of a weird day to do a show. And usually I don't do a bunch of shows on Sunday, but I'm up, I'm here, I'm fronting the camera, so I was like, fuck it, let's do it. You guys have an awesome, awesome Sunday. I want to thank everybody for calling in. And let me make sure. Yeah, good. Yeah. You guys have a good day. The rest of it, I think this is probably going to be my last show, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one, guys. Oh, and if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, there's always Patreon. Thanks, everyone.